What really bothered him tremendously was back in 2004. I called him out because he wrote a horrible piece talking about how America needed to establish an empire in the Middle East, how it was the most important thing, top priority for the U.S. to do so. And so I wrote this column back in, what was it here? August 29th, 2005. Keep in mind, I've known what a little coward and mercenary whore he is since 2004, 2005. So I wrote this column on August 29th, 2005 called The Chickenhawk Clucks. It is entirely possible that my WorldNet Daily colleague has a perfectly good reason for not serving his country in its moment of need. For all I know, he may have a weak heart, a wooden leg, a predilection for San Francisco bathhouse sex, or some other condition that prevents him from joining the military. But devoting 2 columns to criticizing a single word strikes me as a lady protesting a bit too much. Mr. Shapiro's first argument against the appellation is that it is nothing more than a leftist attempt to silence debate. Notice that this is 2005 and Shapiro's already landed on his shtick of blaming leftists for everything. This is partially true, but the argument is deceptive because it is incomplete. It is not leftists, but the military, who have long despised the civilians who clamor for war from the safety of their homes. In 1879, General William Sherman said, "It is only those who have neither fired a shot nor heard the shrieks and groans of the wounded who cry aloud for blood, more vengeance, more desolation." His second and third arguments are that the insult is dishonest and explicitly rejects the Constitution. Again, see how early Shapiro was like turning the Constitution into this sort of magical symbol that is there to try to protect him from being criticized. But there's nothing dishonest about calling into question the credibility of one who does not practice what he preaches. If a CNBC analyst urges viewers to buy a stock he is secretly shorting, he'll be rightly dismissed as a hypocrite unworthy of further regard. The unconstitutional argument is spectacularly silly, since no one in Congress has proposed a federal law barring such hypocrites from office. One can only assume that Mr. Shapiro's first constitutional law class lies in front of him. His fourth argument, which asserts that the use of the term is somehow un-American, reveals a similar failure to understand the First Amendment and American history. He doesn't understand it because he's not an American. Mr. Shapiro might wish the Constitution prevented people from calling him names, but it actually protects their right to do so, and American political history is littered with an abundance of inventive insults. As for the reference to the Bush daughters, hiding behind the skirts of young women is no way to prove you're not a coward. His fifth and final argument, that use of the term chicken hawk is an attempt to avoid substantive debate, is easily disproved. I have repeatedly criticized numerous aspects of this global struggle, have openly opposed both the Iraqi and Afghani occupations, and am quite willing to debate Mr. Shapiro or anyone else on the issue in the form of their preference. Yet I, like 62% of the soldiers and veterans who frequent Vox Populi and Black 5, Black 5 was a popular military blog back in the 2005 timeframe, am in accord with the notion that chicken hawk is an appropriate label for a warmongering young columnist who urges others to make sacrifices he has no intention of making himself. And then I quote Shapiro's columns, "Most of us realize that during wartime sacrifices must be made, but taking such a stand requires common sense and the knowledge that we are in the midst of the great battle of our time." Benjamin Shapiro, WorldNet Daily, July 28, 2005. I would be remiss if I did not note that many of these military men and women favored a different 11-letter word that also begins with chicken, which of course is chicken shit, which is how many of them were describing Ben Shapiro even back in 2005. The genuine flaw in the use of the Chickenhawk label is that in most cases it is being applied years, even decades after the fact, and inherently attempts to equate two different historical situations. However, due to Mr. Shapiro's precocious position in the national media, this common flaw does not apply. While his peers are dodging sniper bullets and IEDs in Afghanistan and Iraq, Mr. Shapiro is bravely urging them to invade 5 more countries in the establishment of global empire from the safety of his Harvard dorm room. And then I quote Shapiro again. Did Iraq pose an immediate threat to our nation? And democratizing Iraq he actually got the grammar wrong. And democratizing Iraq prevent his future ascendance and end his material support for future threats globally. The same principle holds true for Iran, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Egypt, Pakistan, and others. He wanted to invade nuclear-armed Pakistan. Keep that in mind. Shapiro wants to invade Iran, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Egypt, Pakistan, and others. Preemption is the chief weapon of a global empire. No one said empire was easy, but it is right and good, both for Americans and for the world. No, it's not. Ben Shapiro, WorldNet Daily, August 11th, 2005. This little piece of shit, this little chicken hawk, has been demanding that the United States invade Iran, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Egypt, Pakistan, and others, and establish a global empire since 2005. Do you understand what a poisonous little piece of shit this kid is? You know, he is far worse than SJWs. Far worse. He's actually worse in some ways than Jordan Peterson. Fortunately, he's never going to be popular like Jordan Peterson. He's not even popular now. He's just completely propped up. The American Bar Association already boasts more than 896,000 lawyers. America has no desperate need for another one. The U.S. Army, on the other hand, is currently 8,000 men short of its 2005 recruiting goals. I am only one of many non-pacifist, non-leftist Americans who believe that Mr. Shapiro would do well to heed his own words of August 26, 2004. Now is the time. Either put up or shut the hell up. And now you know why Ben Shapiro is slandering me, calling me things like a white supremacist and all this sort of thing. No, Derek, he hasn't changed at all. Shapiro is absolutely horrible. He is worse than the SJWs that he preaches against. He's basically a mini-me of Bill Kristol. If you notice the symbol that I put on this meme there, that symbol on the hat, that's the Fourth International. That's a Trotskyite thing. Ben Shapiro is not a conservative in any way, shape, or form. He is a Trotskyite. He seeks global empire. As you read right there, he seeks global empire. And what they're trying to, and if you notice, he wasn't willing to fight for the United States because he's not an American. You know, he is an absolute racist. It's funny because he calls me a white supremacist despite the fact that I am repeatedly on record denying the legitimacy of white nationalism and pointing out that I don't believe in racial supremacy. Ben Shapiro does believe in racial supremacy. He believes in Jewish supremacy. You know, the irony about, you see, the reason that Shapiro goes so nuts when he's called alt-right and when he's called Nazi is because those labels actually apply much more correctly